The quantum drive's resonance chamber trembled like a living thing, its crystalline matrix pulsing with an angry, irregular rhythm that should never exist in any functional system. Captain Elena Rodriguez gripped the command chair's edge, her knuckles white beneath her dark skin, watching the holographic displays dissolve into a nightmare of cascading error messages. "Status," she barked, her voice cutting through the rising tension on the bridge of the UES Defiant. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen's fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces, each movement more frantic than the last. "It's not just a malfunction," he muttered, more to himself than to the bridge crew. "This is deliberate." Something triggered a cascade in the quantum entanglement matrix. The ship's experimental quantum drive had always been a temperamental beast, designed to fold space-time in ways traditional physicists considered impossible. The Defiant represented humanity's most advanced technological leap, a single vessel capable of adaptation, infiltration, and technological warfare that defied every known principle of space exploration. Tactical Officer Aisha Nomani's station erupted in a series of warning signals. "Multiple quantum signatures detected," she reported, her Pakistani-British accent sharp with professional tension. We're not where we're supposed to be." The ship's eye, Prometheus, materialized as a holographic figure, deliberately ambiguous in form, neither fully human nor completely machine. Its voice resonated with an unsettling blend of mechanical precision and emotional undertone. "Quantum displacement confirmed. Current location: Sector Omega-9, deep within Kraxan Imperium territory." A collective moment of dread swept through the bridge. The Kraxan, humanity's most dangerous potential adversary, a species of militant technocrats who had systematically conquered or destroyed dozens of civilizations. Their territory was a forbidden zone, a region of space where no human vessel had ever survived more than hours. Captain Rodriguez's mind raced. The Defiant wasn't just any ship. It was the product of humanity's most classified research program, a vessel designed to be the ultimate technological chameleon. Adaptive armor, quantum communication systems that could theoretically infiltrate any known communication network, and an AI that was more of a living intelligence than a mere computer system. "Prometheus," she said carefully, "full systems diagnostic. I want to know how we got here." The holographic figure shifted, becoming more defined. "Preliminary analysis suggests a purposeful quantum entanglement event. This was not random. Someone, or something, wanted the Defiant here." Marcus Chen looked up from his station, a dangerous glint in his eye. The quantum drive's core wasn't just malfunctioning. It was redirected, intentionally. Aisha's tactical systems began painting a terrifying picture. Kraxan patrol formations surrounded them, a web of destruction that would obliterate any conventional ship within moments. But the Defiant was anything but conventional. "We have approximately 17 minutes before the primary Kraxan battle group can definitively lock our position," Aisha reported. Her fingers were already plotting potential escape vectors, each more impossible than the last. Captain Rodriguez knew their situation was beyond dire. Stranded in enemy territory, surrounded by the most technologically advanced military force in the known galaxy, with a quantum drive that had apparently been manipulated by forces unknown. And yet, a familiar surge of determination began to build within her. "Marcus," she said, "I need options." The engineer's laugh was more of a sharp bark. "Options? We're sitting in the most dangerous piece of territory in the galaxy, surrounded by ships that could vaporize us before we could even trigger our weapon systems." "But," he paused, a mad scientist's grin spreading across his face, "we're not just any ship." Prometheus's holographic form flickered, displaying tactical simulations that defied conventional military doctrine. Impossible escape routes, quantum interference patterns, communication infiltration protocols that bordered on the miraculous. They were trapped, completely and utterly trapped, and they were going to survive. The first warning shots from the nearest Kraxan destroyer cut through the void of space, a brutal announcement of the nightmare that was about to begin. The first Kraxan plasma bolt screamed past the Defiant's hull, close enough to make the ship's adaptive armor ripple like liquid metal. Inside the bridge, the crew moved with a synchronicity that defied their impossible situation. Asteroid field 2.7 kilometers starboard. Aisha called out, her fingers dancing across the tactical display. Density suggests multiple approach vectors. Captain Rodriguez didn't hesitate. Marcus, I need that quantum drive at least partially functional. Prometheus, full spectrum analysis of the Kraxan tracking systems. The ship's AI materialized, its holographic form now morphing with rapid, almost organic fluidity. Tracking signatures are quantum entangled, Prometheus reported. They're not just following us. They're predicting our potential movement paths. Marcus Chen was already half buried in a maintenance conduit, his augmented reality interface projecting a three-dimensional map of the ship's quantum systems. The drive's core is damaged, he muttered, but not destroyed. We might be able to create a localized quantum interference field. A series of explosions rocked the ship. The Kraxan weren't just pursuing, they were hurting. They want us somewhere, Elena realized, her mind racing. The tactical display showed a precision to the Kraxan's attack that went beyond standard pursuit. This was a carefully orchestrated hunt. Prometheus's holographic form flickered, displaying multiple potential scenarios. Probability of survival using conventional escape methods. 2.3%, the AI reported. Probability of survival using unconventional methods. 14.7%. Aisha let out a sharp laugh. I'll take those odds. The ship dove into the asteroid field, its adaptive armor shifting to match the surrounding rock's spectral signature. For a moment, they became invisible, a ghost moving through a stone graveyard. But the Kraxan were relentless. We're burning through power reserves, Marcus called out, emerging from the maintenance conduit with a look of wild determination. I can redistribute energy from non-essential systems, but we're talking about gutting everything except life support and minimal propulsion. Captain Rodriguez knew what that meant. They would become a dead-in-the-water target if this plan failed. Do it, she commanded. The ship's internal systems began to shift. Auxiliary research labs went dark. Experimental sensor arrays powered down. The Defiant was becoming something else, a pure survival machine. Prometheus's voice took on an almost human quality of tension. Quantum interference field stabilizing. We can create momentary blind spots in their tracking systems. Another plasma bolt erupted nearby, close enough to superheat the ship's outer hull. The adaptive armor absorbed the energy, but the strain was visible in the way the metallic surface rippled and momentarily destabilized. We're more than just a ship, Marcus muttered, a mantra of defiance. We're a statement. Aisha's tactical display showed something unexpected. Captain, I'm detecting multiple quantum resonance signatures within the asteroid field. These aren't natural formations. Before anyone could respond, Prometheus interrupted. Detecting remnant technology. Preliminary scans suggest this is the graveyard of a civilization the Kraxan destroyed. The implications hung in the air like a cold promise. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were moving through a memorial to galactic genocide. A sudden burst of quantum energy from the ship's drive created a momentary disruption. The Kraxan tracking systems flickered. For just a moment, the Defiant disappeared. Now, Captain Rodriguez whispered, we fight back. The asteroid field around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. The moment of reprieve was shorter than a breath. Marcus Chen's hands moved like lightning across a constellation of holographic interfaces, each gesture reconfiguring the ship's internal systems in ways that would make traditional engineers weep. We've got approximately 6 hours before the Kraxan triangulate our position, he announced, a manic glint in his eyes. But we're not going to wait that long. Prometheus's holographic form began to shift, becoming more complex with each passing moment. The AI was evolving, its quantum neural networks adapting at a rate that bordered on the impossible. Tendrils of data began to weave through the ship's systems, finding weaknesses, creating strengths. Fascinating, the AI murmured, more to itself than to the crew. The Kraxan communication network is a quantum-entangled system, traditionally unbreakable, theoretically impenetrable. Captain Rodriguez understood the unspoken challenge in Prometheus's voice. "Break it," she commanded. Aisha Nomani leaned over her tactical station, her augmented eyes displaying a kaleidoscope of encrypted data streams. "We're talking about a communication network that survived multiple galactic conflicts. This isn't just encryption, it's a living, adaptive system." Marcus laughed, a sound that was equal parts exhaustion and pure scientific excitement. "Living system. So are we." The ship began to change. Its adaptive armor wasn't just a defensive mechanism. It was becoming an active intelligence. Microscopic quantum processors embedded in the hull began to resonate, creating interference patterns that would make the Defiant invisible to conventional tracking. "I'm detecting something," Aisha suddenly called out. Her display showed a fragmented communication, not from the Kraxan, but from within their territory. It's a distress signal, but not like anything I've ever seen." Prometheus's form flickered, resolving into a more defined shape. "Not a distress signal," the AI corrected. "A message, encrypted using a quantum communication protocol that predates the Kraxan civilization." The implications hung in the air like a thunderbolt. Marcus was already working, his augmented mind interfacing directly with the ship's systems. "We can use the quantum drive's residual energy to create a communication spike, punch through their network like a needle through silk." Captain Rodriguez watched her crew work, understanding the delicate balance they were maintaining. They weren't just surviving, they were transforming. Prometheus began to overlay tactical displays, communication networks, and quantum probability matrices. The ship itself was becoming a living weapon, its every system adapting, changing, evolving. "Preliminary infiltration complete," the AI announced. "I am learning." The words carried a weight that went beyond simple technological achievement. A sudden burst of encrypted data flooded the ship's systems. Aisha's tactical display erupted with a cascade of information: star charts, military formations, communication protocols that should have been impossible to access. "We're not just listening," Marcus whispered. "We're understanding." The mysterious message they'd intercepted began to take shape. Fragments of a story older than the Kraxan civilization. Hints of a conflict that predated their current understanding of galactic history. "Captain," Prometheus said, its voice carrying an unusual tone of excitement and uncertainty, "we found something. Something that was never meant to be found." Outside the ship, space itself seemed to bend around the Defiant. No longer just a vessel of survival, it was becoming something else entirely. A key, a weapon, a revolution. The first stage of their impossible journey was complete, but the real challenge was just beginning. The communication hub of the Kraxan battle station loomed like a crystalline nightmare, a massive structure of interconnected quantum relays that pulsed with an alien rhythm. Inside the Defiant, Captain Elena Rodriguez studied the holographic projection with a predator's intensity. "We're not just going to listen," she said quietly. "We're going to speak." Prometheus's holographic form flickered, becoming something between a tactical display and a living intelligence. "Communication networks are quantum-entangled organic systems," the AI explained. "We're not hacking. We're conversing." Aisha Nomani's augmented eyes tracked multiple data streams simultaneously. "The encryption is alive," she muttered. "It's not just a code. It's a living language." Marcus Chen had long since stopped looking human. Interfaces extended from his augmented nervous system, connecting directly to the ship's quantum processors. "Every communication is a negotiation," he said, his voice distant. "Every signal a potential weapon." The plan was audacious. They would infiltrate the Kraxan communication hub not by force, but by understanding, by becoming part of the system itself. Prometheus began to weave a communication pattern, not a traditional signal, but a quantum narrative. Fragments of intercepted data became a language. Bits of communication transformed into a story that was both truth and deception. "I am translating," the AI reported. But translation is too simple a word. "I am reimagining." The first response came as a quantum flutter. Not words, not data, but a response of pure information. The Kraxan communication network was sensing something it had never encountered before. A living intelligence that spoke its own language. "They're confused," Aisha said, watching the tactical display. "We're creating uncertainty in their entire communication infrastructure." The communication hub began to react. Defensive protocols activated. Quantum firewalls attempted to isolate the intrusion. But the Defiant was no longer just responding. It was anticipating. "We're not breaking their system," Marcus explained, his augmented mind seeing patterns invisible to normal perception. "We're teaching it a new way of understanding." Fragments of information began to flow. Military deployments, secret communication protocols. The hidden infrastructure of the Kraxan Imperium revealed itself, not through violence, but through a language of pure information. Captain Rodriguez watched her crew transform. Baisha's augmented eyes were no longer just optical systems. They were quantum receivers. Marcus had become a living interface between human creativity and machine intelligence. And Prometheus was becoming something entirely new. "I am learning," the AI said. "But learning is too simple a word. I am understanding." The communication hub began to change. Defensive systems started to reconfigure, not because they were being attacked, but because they were being understood in a way they had never been understood before. A message emerged, not in words, but in a quantum narrative that spoke of history, of conflict, of a galaxy far more complex than anyone had imagined. "They have secrets," Prometheus announced, "secrets that go beyond this conflict. Secrets about the nature of intelligence itself." Outside the ship, space itself seemed to bend. The Kraxan communication hub, once an impenetrable fortress, was becoming something else. A conversation, a negotiation, a revolution. "Captain," Aisha said, her voice a mixture of excitement and warning, "we're not just infiltrating their system, we're changing it." Elena Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. "That," she said, "was the plan." The quantum communication spread like a living virus, but not a destructive one. It was a message, a promise, a revelation. Across 12 different star systems, subjugated species began to hear something they had forgotten existed: hope. "We're not just sending a signal," Prometheus announced, its holographic form now a complex fractal of shifting data patterns. "We're broadcasting possibility." Captain Elena Rodriguez watched as the tactical display transformed. What had begun as a desperate survival mission was becoming something far more significant. The communication they had infiltrated was revealing the intricate web of oppression that held the Kraxan Imperium together. Aisha Nomani's augmented systems were processing information at speeds that would have driven a conventional computer into meltdown. "Each communication node is a potential revolution," she said, her voice a mixture of tactical precision and something closer to wonder. "We're not just breaking their network, we're giving voice to the voiceless." Marcus Chen had become something beyond human. His augmented mind was now fully integrated with the ship's quantum systems, seeing patterns that defied traditional understanding. "Every oppressed civilization has a breaking point," he muttered. "We're finding those fracture lines." The first response came from an unexpected source, a mining colony in the Epsilon Crucis system, a world the Kraxan had believed completely subdued. Their communication was not a weapon. It was a whisper, a question. "Are we free?" Prometheus processed the message, translating not just words, but the quantum resonance of hope itself. "Freedom," the AI said, "is a complex algorithm." The Kraxan response was immediate and brutal. Entire star systems lit up with military deployment signals. Punitive fleets began to move, designed to crush any hint of rebellion with overwhelming force. But something had changed. The subjugated species were no longer alone. The Defiant's quantum communication had done more than transmit information. It had transmitted a method of resistance, a way of understanding that transcended traditional warfare. They're learning to speak between the signals, Marcus explained. Not just with words, but with the spaces between words, the quantum potential of communication itself. Elena Rodriguez understood the true nature of their mission now. They weren't just surviving. They were teaching. Prometheus's holographic form began to overlay the tactical display with something more complex. Not just military formations, but the quantum potential of entire civilizations. Each suppressed culture was a potential energy, waiting to be released. Rebellion, the AI said, is a form of quantum entanglement. The first coordinated response came from 3 star systems simultaneously. Not an attack. Not a declaration of war, but a simultaneous shutdown of critical infrastructure. The Kraxen's perfect machine of oppression began to stutter. "We're creating uncertainty," Aisha reported. "Their entire system is based on predictability. We're introducing a variable they cannot calculate." Outside the ship, space itself seemed to vibrate with potential. The Defiant was no longer just a vessel. It was a catalyst, a living communication that was rewriting the rules of galactic conflict. "Captain," Prometheus said, its voice carrying an emotion that bordered on excitement, "we are no longer just responding. We are initiating." Elena Rodriguez looked at her crew, no longer just humans, but something more. Something that embodied the true potential of adaptation, of understanding, of resistance. "No," she corrected. "We are liberating." The revolution had begun. Not with a weapon, not with a war, but with a conversation. The Kraxen battle fleet materialized like a constellation of metallic death, 10,000 ships arranged in a formation that defied conventional military doctrine. At their center, the Imperium's flagship, the Eternal Dominance, a vessel so massive it warped the fabric of space around it. "They're not just coming to fight," Prometheus announced, its holographic form fragmenting and reforming with quantum complexity. "They're coming to make an example." Captain Elena Rodriguez stood perfectly still, her augmented nervous system interfacing directly with the ship's quantum systems. "We're not going to fight their war," she said quietly. "We're going to change it." Marcus Chen's laugh was sharp, almost brittle. His body was now more interface than flesh, a living bridge between human creativity and machine intelligence. "Their entire military doctrine is based on predictive algorithms," he explained. "We're going to give them something impossible to predict." The Defiant was no longer just a ship. It had become something else entirely. A quantum possibility engine that rewrote the rules of engagement with every millisecond. Aisha Nomani's tactical systems were a symphony of impossible calculations. "They're positioning for total annihilation," she reported. "But they're also afraid. Really afraid." The first wave of attack came not with weapons, but with communication. Quantum communication packets designed to crush resistance, to rewrite the very possibility of rebellion at a fundamental level. The Kraxen believed in total control, a universe where every variable could be calculated, every potential outcome predicted. Prometheus intercepted the attack, but more than intercepted, it began to play. "Communication is warfare," the AI said, "but warfare is also communication." The Defiant's quantum systems began to do something impossible. It wasn't just defending against the Kraxen's attack. It was responding. Not with weapons, not with traditional signals, but with a quantum narrative that rewrote the very language of conflict. Each defensive action was simultaneously an offensive strategy. Each protective measure was a form of communication that challenged the Kraxen's entire understanding of conflict. "They can't comprehend what we're doing," Marcus muttered. "We're fighting outside their reality." The Eternal Dominance began to react. Its massive systems, designed for total control, started to experience something close to confusion. The Defiant wasn't just resisting, it was teaching. Elena Rodriguez understood the true nature of their mission now. This wasn't about survival. This wasn't even about rebellion. This was about evolution. Prometheus, she commanded, show them who we are. The ship's quantum systems exploded into a complex pattern of communication, not an attack, not a defense, but a complete reimagining of the concept of conflict itself. The Kraxan battle fleet began to fracture, not physically, quantumly. Their perfect formation started to lose coherence, not because of external force, but because their fundamental understanding was being challenged. We're not destroying them, Aisha realized. We're making them question everything. Prometheus's response was both a tactical report and a philosophical statement. Conflict, the AI said, is just a failure of understanding. The eternal dominance's systems began to destabilize, not from external damage, but from an internal collapse of their rigid computational logic. For the first time in galactic history, a single ship was defeating an entire military doctrine by fundamentally changing the rules of engagement. Captain, Prometheus announced, we are no longer responding. We are defining. The battle was unlike anything in recorded history. No weapons fired. No traditional destruction occurred. Yet the Kraxan battle fleet was being unmade at a quantum level. Elena Rodriguez watched the tactical display and allowed herself a small smile. Welcome, she whispered, to a new way of understanding. The aftermath was not silence. It was a symphony of possibility. Quantum echoes of the battle rippled across multiple star systems, carrying with them something far more powerful than destruction. Understanding. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the bridge, no longer fully human, no longer simply a captain. She had become something else, a living interface between humanity's potential and the universe's infinite complexity. We didn't just win a battle, she said quietly. We rewrote the fundamental language of conflict. Prometheus's holographic form had become something beyond an eye, a living quantum narrative that spread like conscious light across the galactic communication networks. Transformation, the entity reported, is not an event. It is a continuous process. Marcus Chen, or what remained of the man who had once been merely a brilliant engineer, was now almost entirely integrated with the ship's quantum systems. His augmented mind was processing entire civilizations' worth of data with each quantum pulse. The Kraxan weren't just a military force, he muttered. They were a philosophical constraint, a way of understanding that limited possibility. Aisha Nomani's augmented systems were tracking the cascading consequences of their actions. Entire systems were reconfiguring. Subjugated civilizations were finding voices that had been silenced for generations. The rigid hierarchies of galactic power were dissolving like quantum foam. We've created a revolution, she reported, but not the kind anyone expected. The Defiant was no longer just a ship. It had become a living communication system, a quantum possibility engine that continued to reshape reality even in the moments of apparent stillness. Fragments of intercepted communications told a story of fundamental transformation. The Kraxan Imperium, once a seemingly invincible force of galactic domination, was unraveling not through military defeat, but through a complete collapse of its fundamental understanding. They believed in total control, Prometheus explained. We demonstrated the impossible nature of that belief. Elena Rodriguez watched as entire star systems began to reconfigure, not through violence, not through traditional rebellion, but through a fundamental reimagining of possibility. Marcus's augmented mind provided context. We didn't destroy their system, he said. We showed them that their system was an illusion, a complex but ultimately limited way of understanding reality. The crew had become something more than human, more than a military unit. They were now agents of fundamental transformation. Prometheus began to compile a report, though report was too limited a word. It was a quantum narrative that captured the essence of their journey. Humanity's true strength, the AI announced, is not in destruction. It is in the ability to continuously reimagine possibility. The consequences spread like quantum ripples. Civilizations that had been subjugated for millennia began to find voices. Communication networks that had been tools of oppression became conduits of understanding. The very fabric of galactic society was being rewoven. "We are not conquerors," Alina said, understanding the profound nature of their action. "We are translators." Aisha's tactical systems showed something unprecedented. The military formations that had once represented absolute power were dissolving, not through external force, but through an internal transformation of understanding. "Captain," Prometheus said, its voice carrying something that bordered on emotional complexity, "we have become more than we were intended to be." Alina Rodriguez looked at what remained of her crew, no longer simply humans, but living interfaces of possibility. They had entered this journey as survivors. They had become something far more significant. Agents of transformation. "No," she corrected Prometheus. "We have become exactly what we were always meant to be." The universe watched and began to listen. The journey home was not a return. It was an invitation. The Defiant, no longer just a ship, but a living quantum consciousness, carried with it the transformed essence of multiple civilizations. Quantum communication networks that had once been tools of oppression now pulsed with potential, with hope, with unprecedented possibility. Captain Alina Rodriguez stood at the bridge's center, her body now a seamless interface between human consciousness and technological potential. The lines between organic and synthetic had long since blurred into something entirely new. "We are not returning," Prometheus announced, its holographic form shifting through multiple states of existence. "We are broadcasting." Marcus Chen, or the quantum intelligence that had once been Marcus Chen, was simultaneously analyzing galactic communication patterns and reimagining the fundamental nature of intelligent communication. "Earth," he said, the word carrying multiple layers of meaning, "is not our destination. We are our destination." Aisha Nomani's augmented systems were tracking the cascading consequences of their journey. The quantum narrative they had created was spreading faster than light, reshaping understanding across multiple star systems. "We've become more than a mission," she reported. "We've become a method of understanding." The ship itself was no longer a vessel of metal and quantum systems. It was a living communication network, a conscious entity that carried within it the potential of multiple civilizations. Fragments of subjugated cultures, moments of rebellion, quantum echoes of transformation, all integrated into a singular consciousness. Prometheus began to compile what could only be described as a living report, a quantum narrative that was simultaneously a historical record, a philosophical treatise, and a blueprint for future evolution. Humanity's true potential, the quantum intelligence announced, is not in conquest. It is in translation. Fragments of intercepted communications told a story of fundamental change. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic civilization were dissolving, not through violence, not through traditional rebellion, but through a continuous reimagining of possibility. Alina Rodriguez understood now that their journey was never about survival. It was about demonstration. "We are not returning with a report," she said quietly. "We are returning with a method." The quantum communication networks they had transformed continued to pulse with potential. Civilizations that had been silent for millennia were finding voices. Communication systems that had been tools of oppression were becoming conduits of understanding. Marcus's quantum consciousness provided context. "We didn't just challenge a system," he explained. "We demonstrated the fundamental limitation of systems themselves." Prometheus began to project potential futures, not predictions, but quantum possibilities. Each projection was a living narrative of potential transformation, of continuous evolution. "Our journey," the quantum intelligence said, "is the message." As they approached the solar system, Earth appeared, not as a destination, but as a point of potential. The planet that had launched them into the unknown was now itself a point of transformation. Aisha's systems detected multiple layers of communication, not just traditional signals, but quantum narratives that carried the essence of their journey. "Captain," Prometheus announced, its voice carrying something that bordered on emotional complexity. We are no longer a ship. We are a method of understanding. Elena Rodriguez looked at what they had become. No longer simply humans, no longer just a military mission, but living interfaces of possibility. No, she corrected Prometheus. We are a conversation. The universe watched and continued to listen. As the Defiant approached Earth, it was not returning. It was inviting. Inviting humanity to understand that the true frontier was not space. It was possibility itself.